scheduled it as a recommended 10-week program, and there's videos that go along with it. Linda's going to run most of that in the evening. Ready to go? Okay. Without further ado, Mollie Clark.
Thank you. I'm super excited to get to share with you my experience studying the Synod on Synodality. Just a tiny bit of background. I've been a member of this parish practically my whole life, and so it's such a privilege to be able to be here with you tonight. I am a sophomore at Fordham University in the Bronx. I'm double majoring in English and theology with an honors concentration in American Catholic Studies. So this is very much up my alley. So I'm really excited to be here tonight. And so just for some context, the class that I took was called Church on the Go, Theology of a Global Synod. And it was a part of our kind of global outreach program at Fordham, which encourages students to really experience cultural immersion alongside their academic classes, as well as outside of their academic classes. In order to kind of fulfill the cultural immersion aspect of this class, we were able to visit Rome for a week from October 13th through October 21st, which was the third week in the first phase of the universal stage of the Synod, which I'll explain in a moment. And just for demographics of my class, there ended up being 10 undergraduate students and 1 grad student. So very small enrollment. I was super lucky to be able to get in. Oh no. Oh, stack.
The lower one? Bottom one?
Bottom one? Oh, thank you. So just to start with, what is synodality? So the word synod is Greek, and it can be defined as to journey together. So the Synod on Synodality is a multi-year process that began in October of 2021 and will continue through this coming October. It began with listening sessions at the local and parish level, like we had here, and continued through the diocesan and continental levels, and it's now culminating in the universal stage in Rome. These sessions invited the people of God to consider and discern the perceived needs of the church under the guidance of the Holy Spirit through a method called conversation in the Spirit. And this synodal process is really lived out through 3 main ideas: communion, participation, and mission. And Pope Francis hopes that we can take this as an opportunity to become a more synodal church by journeying together, united as a people of God, in order to widen the scope of the metaphorical tent of the church at both a local and an institutional level. So this looks like including all voices in the synodal process, such as what was done at the local level, wherein representatives from our parish came together to have open dialogue regarding the church, and it's happening even at the universal stage. So this is the first time in the history of synods being called that both women and lay people have the opportunity to vote at the universal stage. So just like the Second Vatican Council called for the active participation of the laity in the Mass, the Synod on Synodality is calling for the active participation of all of the people of God in the discernment process for the future of the church. So this image really demonstrates that, just in the sense that every person is sitting equally at these tables. There is no hierarchy here. They're all facing one another in order to have this kind of open dialogue under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Just to continue with that, synodality is an ongoing process. So it is less rooted in a desire for specific doctrinal changes or a specific agenda, and it's more focused on deeply listening to and understanding the unique perspectives of all members of the church. Okay, so my own encounter with synodality, how I kind of got involved with this class. So I had heard that Fordham was going to run this class around this time last year, and I really didn't know anything about the Synod on Synodality, but I had the opportunity to go to a talk in Manhattan given by Sister Nathalie Bequart, who is the undersecretary to the Synod of Bishops, or like kind of known colloquially as like the highest ranking woman in the Vatican, and her ministry is to kind of assist in this synodal process. And so part of that was doing outreach, particularly to like young people. So her talk really covered like the reasons why the church was calling for the voices of young people and the laity and women to be heard. And that really inspired me to really apply for this class, because I was super, I don't know, that really like pulled me in. I was like, okay, like the church is actively asking to hear my voice, like I want to be able to contribute to that. Yes, okay. Okay, so how did we prepare? So we kind of first became familiarized with what the synodal process looks like. So we read other papal encyclicals from other processes, such as the papal exhortation that Pope Francis kind of released after the Synod on Youth. We also read the Instrumentum Laboris, which is also known as the working document, which was all of the convergences, divergences, and recommendations that were produced from conversations in the Spirit at the local, diocesan, and continental levels. And it was all kind of brought together again into one working document. And we read it like throughout the course of our class in preparation, because it was the same document that the voting delegates in the Synod Hall would be reading and praying over during the universal stage. Okay, so our immersion experience. So really, like as much as we could kind of study synodality in theory, it's honestly something that just you need to kind of live out and experience in order to really grasp. So these are some photos of us throughout our journey in Rome, starting with us in the airport, and then our first time in St. Peter's Square, going into a dinner we were able to have with a group of college-age students that live in a community in Rome, as well as us waiting in line for a papal audience, which we were really excited about. But really, you know, throughout this experience, like the reason why I can say like this was a transformational experience. I had a true conversion of heart. But what does that mean, and like how did this experience actually fulfill that? And to begin with, like it was rooted in prayer. So throughout our time in Rome, we had a lot of opportunities to go to Mass, to have just a communal prayer, and really just in every experience we had, like we really tried to keep Christ at the center of it. So we had the opportunity to go to daily Mass at St. Peter's Basilica. So this first photo is of some members of my class walking in St. Peter's Square on our way to Mass. And then the photo to the right of that is a picture of the chapel that was a part of the hotel we were able to stay at. So we stayed at an inn about a quarter mile from St. Peter's Square, and it was run by the Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and Immaculate Heart of Mary. And so there was this beautiful chapel just included within the building, and every night a small group from our class would have night prayer there, just as an opportunity to kind of reflect on the day and recenter and prepare spiritually for the events of the next day. And then kind of below those first two photos, we had the opportunity to tour St. Ignatius of Loyola's apartments, and we were able to have Mass in the room where he passed away. So just an incredibly like spiritually significant experience, but again, just praying together, having the Eucharist in that space was incredibly moving. And then this is an incredibly zoomed in photo of Pope Francis at the papal audience we attended. Unfortunately, we were not that close. I wish that we were. But again, like just the opportunity to be in that space alongside so many other pilgrims, journeying for the same thing and getting to pray with them in that large group setting was so essential. And then just here's another photo of kind of the inside of St. Peter's Basilica. This was the area of the Basilica where we were able to have Mass, and the Mass that we had was in Portuguese, which was really interesting. Just really a testament to the universality of the church. So that was really beautiful. Okay, And this requires some backstory. So our first night in Rome, there was a group of us who decided to, we had dinner, and then we decided to walk back to our hotel. And as we were passing St. Peter's Square, we just heard this beautiful music emanating from the area. So we decided to kind of go in and see what was happening. And there was a living rosary taking place. So there were hundreds of people carrying these lighted candles, praying with one another. And then eventually at the kind of the tail end, which I caught on video, there was just there was like a singing happening, which was really beautiful. And an icon of the Holy Family was kind of being processed out of the square. So this is my very poor quality video footage, but I wanted to show you this because to me, like, this really demonstrated like what synodality is. It's journeying together as a people of God, like really enacting the idea that we are a pilgrim church, we are a learning church, but we are united under our love of Christ, and that is what sustains us. And it was people of all walks of life, so young, old, men, women, religious, lay people, consecrated religious, lay people. So it was just a beautiful depiction of synodality. So let's hope the video works. So that was just a small snippet. And then continuing, really in the synodal process, the hope is to foster a culture of encounter. And that can look like a lot of different things, but really where I found that to be the most lived out was in the people we were able to meet. So this top left photo is a very excited selfie that we took with one of the youngest voting synod delegates, Julia Oseka. She's 22, she's originally from Poland, but she is currently studying at St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia. And she is the youngest lay woman voting in the Synod. So we were very excited to meet her. And then the photo below that is my class actually having dinner with her alongside Wyatt, who is 19 and the youngest voting Synod delegate, period. And then although it's kind of difficult to tell in this photo here, we're kind of just chatting with the two of them, as well as Father Yvonne, who is the third youngest voting Synod delegate. And just hearing their experiences of actually being in the Synod Hall, because obviously my class wasn't able to actually be in the hall, but hearing the experiences truly just of the transformation of heart that was happening through the process of conversation in the Spirit, people who had maybe come into the synodal process with certain biases or maybe even certain agendas really were opening their minds and their hearts to listen to others and truly have that encounter through those conversations. And as a result of that, I think myself and my fellow classmates were also kind of transformed by meeting these delegates. And then in this top right corner, it's really difficult to tell, but we actually met Sister Nathalie Becquart, which was just an incredible full circle moment because she was really the person that sort of ignited my own fire about synodality, and to have a chance to formally meet her and just ask her questions about the synodal process and her role in it was such a privilege. And then in this lower corner here, this is my class after having the opportunity to attend an English language mass on the first Sunday we were in Rome. And we also met Father James Martin, who was another voting delegate from New York City. So that was really cool as well. And another opportunity we really had to meet people that were truly embodying synodality was meeting with representatives from an organization called Sant'Egidio. And it's an organization of people of all ages, both college-age students and older adults, who specifically work to serve those on the peripheries, those who are marginalized, So those who are struggling with homelessness, those who are migrants, those with food insecurity, and that we just learned about the communal meals that they serve, the clothing drives that they do, the ways that they go out and distribute food to people that are staying on the streets. And truly, I felt like meeting these individuals just totally demonstrated both the gospel mission of living for the poor and the synodal mission of bringing the peripheries to the center. Because obviously, as Pope Francis kind of has stated, like the goal of these synodal conversations is to make sure all voices within the church are heard and considered, and that specifically includes when we think of like Catholic social teaching, like the preferential option for the poor and vulnerable. And this was a group of people that were fully living that out, and I thought that was incredible to witness. And I was particularly moved outside of their kind of main building of operation. They have this statue, and it's specifically depicting an image of Christ as a homeless person, which I thought was just a great, just kind of summed up not only their mission, but honestly like the mission that we all kind of have as Christians, is to consider every person on the peripheries as though, encounter them as we would Christ. Yeah, and kind of the final piece of what I think made our time in Rome so transformative was actually being able to have a conversation in the Spirit. So we had, before we traveled to Rome, we hadn't had a conversation in the Spirit. We had like learned about the process, but we weren't super familiar with the particulars. But again, like conversations in the Spirit are methods, the method used for communal discernment within the Synod, which is first and foremost, always guided by the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is active in every individual participant and just active in the room as these conversations are going on. Along with that, they're characterized by deep intentional listening and prayerful, discerned contributions of each participant. And so having the opportunity to partake in these conversations and really allow myself to let the Holy Spirit enter through me, work through me, in regards to answering just questions about my own, relationship with the current state of the church, maybe hopes that I have for the church, things that I found that I really, really loved about the church, and just getting to have those authentic conversations with my peers was just totally transformative. And I really believe like it is within these conversations that a conversion of heart happens, because like when we hear others' experiences with the church, their hopes and their desires under the discerned guidance of the Holy Spirit, it personifies issues and it removes certain biases we may have or certain agendas we're seeking, and it really forces participants to just witness the ways that the Holy Spirit is working through each person they're encountering, which I think is just incredibly beautiful. And I think that's why that these specific conversations had such an effect in the Synod Hall. And so kind of going off of this, like we met so many wonderful people, we had so many incredible encounters, but the question was really, how do we bring this to Fordham's campus? How do we bring this home? So that's what we've been trying to do. So to start, a significant way we're trying to do this is simply by sharing our experience with others. So the Synod office at the Vatican has asked that during this interim period between the two sessions of the universal stage of the Synod, that those who had a direct encounter with the Synod share their experience. So although, again, like my class, like we're not voting delegates, we weren't able to be in the Synod Hall, like we certainly did have direct encounters with the concept of synodality, with living out synodality, and with people that are also living out synodality. And so it's kind of just like our responsibility to share that with others. So we had a panel where we discussed this like for the Fordham community, and we also met with a youth group in Manhattan and talked about our experiences. And then something that I'm super excited about, but Julia Oseka, again, one of the youngest voting Synod delegates, actually came to Fordham last week. That. Along with this, as my final project for the class, myself and a few of our classmates collaborated to organize a synodal art gallery. And essentially what that looked like was reaching out to community members both in the Bronx and at Fordham to create art pieces based on their conception of synodality. A lot of students were kind of unfamiliar with the synod, so it really gave us an opportunity to share what we had learned in the class and also the transformational encounters we had in Rome. And as a result, students made some really beautiful pieces. One of my classmates actually carved the synod logo out of wood, and then it's kind of difficult to see, but the collage that's kind of pictured in the back of this photo was actually put together by students of a high school located in the Bronx, of the various service projects that they kind of took part in over the course of their semester, which again is really just living out not only like the preferential option for the poor and vulnerable, but also just bringing those on the margins to the center of the conversation by just sharing with us like the work that they did with those communities. And then these are some photos of community outreach that my classmates and I kind of did about the synod. So as a part of this art gallery, we invited students to kind of chat with us about our experience with the synod, and we asked them like if they knew anything regarding the synodal process, and to kind of express that through art. And it was really interesting to witness because we asked that on those white cards, students kind of draw anything that they kind of thought of when they pictured the church or their relationship with God before talking with us about the synod. And then we would take time, have a conversation with them, and then we asked them to draw on the colorful Post-it notes. And it was really interesting to see kind of how their view of like God and like church had been sort of broadened by those conversations. It was really cool. And again, just getting to meet students where they were at was really an awesome experience. So kind of the major thing that we did was actually having conversations in the spirit with the Fordham community. So the Synod office in Rome has asked the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops to have more listening sessions for the American Church, like at like the local and diocesan level. And so a classmate of mine and myself actually put together an opportunity for students at Fordham and faculty at Fordham to have a conversation in the spirit. So we hosted 2 facilitator training sessions and then the actual conversation. So this kind of big photo is everyone that participated, and then we have a smaller group photo of our student facilitators, and then just another photo of kind of the process of the event. But this was really empowering because, I mean, again, like what really drew me into the synodal process was the idea that young people are a super important part of perpetuating the process. And so getting to demonstrate that by having a student-led conversation in the spirit was really exciting. And most importantly, we're currently in the process of synthesizing the data from these conversations to send to the USCCB. So these students' voices will be heard by the Vatican, which is really exciting. And kind of finally, the most recent event I organized was this past weekend, and it was the Catholic Women Speak Symposium. So kind of in response to the call, again, for more women and young people to be involved and have their voices heard in the church, we hosted this event where women from the Fordham community and the Bronx community could come and talk about their experiences with their faith and living out their vocations. It was an incredibly empowering afternoon. We had the chair of our theology department, Dr. Christine Hinsey, talk about her role as like an educator and a woman of faith. Again, we had Julia Oseka talk about her experience as a voting delegate. And then this photo here is my 2 co-organizers who are altar servers at our Mass, and then this is a photo of me kind of making our opening remarks at the event. And just to close, I actually wrote a poem kind of in response to my experience with the Synod, as a part of our Synodal art gallery. Each of us kind of created a piece of art that sort of represented our time in Rome, and so this was my piece of art. So if you don't mind, I'd just like to read it for you. And then I'd love to open up the floor to questions, comments, anything like that. So this is called "We Are Holy in Our Time." A widening tent, an open heart. The Spirit finds us in our inadequacies. In communion with you and one another, we are enveloped in your love. Our footsteps on the pavement resound like a single heartbeat. Walking with each other, love comes in every form. In the cries for justice, emboldened by the fire in our hearts, it is not simply change we seek, but redemption, a replenishing of your church. May we all be bread for others. May we all become your feast. In the darkest depths of despair, you approach like the new dawn, guiding your sheep along the path of righteousness. May we seek you in our unknowing, in our uncertainty. May we become the embodiment of your love. Through the dreams you have written on our hearts, the ink still drying, the story freshly penned by your expert hand, love pours forth, and we are made new. Thank you so much. So I would love to take any questions or comments or.
Do you want to end the recorded session?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you to everyone who came on the live stream.
I just figured it might be easier to talk when we don't feel like the recording's happening. You know, just have the discussion part of it. Thank you.